Welcome back to the Plant Remedy Podcast. It's your host, Chef Bay, and I am so excited that you're here with me for this episode. If you're new here, I am a professional plant-based chef, a cookbook author of the cookbook Cook, Heal, Go Vegan, a podcast host, obviously, and I live in San Diego with my husband and my two ridiculously adorable rescue pups, Coco and Pina. I am so glad that you're here. We took a little break for the holidays as we were just like taking in some R&R time, just my husband and I. And now we're back for 2023. So happy New Year, you guys. I hope you're settling into the new year really well. I know a new year can bring a lot of anxiety and just kind of like anxiousness around New Year's resolutions, and it can feel like a lot of pressure, so much coming at us from different things to try. I'm part of the problem, I realize, with my plant-based challenge, but I love Veganuary, so hate me for it if you want to. But, it's so important to settle into your future self and who you really want to be, and have your resolutions and your goals align with just taking one more step closer to that future self that you want to be. I think it's so easy to be like, I'm going to change my whole life this year. I'm going to be this different person, or I'm going to do this and do that. And although sometimes it works, like I went vegan on a New Year's resolution and it literally changed my entire life. But it doesn't always have to be like that every year. I think some years can be insanely transformative and we can make big changes and big choices on the new year. And some years we can decide to do smaller things. So for me, my resolutions or my goals this year, I am doing Sober January, which I'm super excited about. My husband and I do it every single year, and I'm actually going to try to stretch it for at least a couple months. I just was noticing in the holidays just like a ton of inflammation, and just like I was not feeling good. I was like nauseous all the time, and I was drinking like recreationally, the holiday parties. I went on a trip with my girlfriends, wine tasting, and I just noticed I was drinking a lot, and like a lot more than I really wanted to be, or like what really felt aligned for me. So not drinking for the last couple weeks has really been amazing, and I'm just feeling so much better. So I just want to keep this train moving. Who knows how long it's going to last for? Maybe the whole month, maybe into February, maybe the whole year, who knows? But I think I'm just not going to put pressure on myself and just go with what feels really good. And I think those types of New Year's resolutions are the ones that really work the most, and really like going with your intuition and going with like, oh, man, this feels good. So that's my big goal, is to just like, when I go out, I'm going to drink soda water. I've been drinking some of those like Kin Euphorics. I've been experimenting with some mocktails, and it's been really fun actually. And I'm just feeling really good and having tons of energy. And I kind of got through that like weird point of the new year, and now I've kind of settled into this kind of like new way of being, and it feels awesome. So hopefully that can be a little bit inspiring for you in whatever your New Year's resolution is. And maybe you made a resolution that you already didn't stick with, and maybe that's just not the right resolution for you or not the right goal. And I also want to remind you that it's okay to not have a resolution. Like, it's okay to not want to change everything. I think little baby consistencies can be like so transformational. That's what I talked about in the last podcast. And if you just want to like be consistent with yourself, and like maybe that's your big goal, is just like, I just want to go to bed at the same time every night, or I want to wash my face before bed every night. I think that's amazing, and I think that is like something to be celebrated as well. Since we are in a new year and we are hosting the 14-day plant-based challenge right now, we have hundreds and hundreds of people in the challenge from all over the world. And one of the questions that I get asked all the time is like, is this affordable? Is this accessible? And is my family going to love this? And of course, my answer is always yes, yes, yes. But I wanted to bring like an expert on the show who can really talk about being plant-based on a budget. So obviously, I'm bringing in Toni from Plant-Based on a Budget. She's amazing. She really kind of became big when she was featured in What the Health. And What the Health was one of the first, vegan movies and vegan documentaries that I ever watched, and it was something that really like shook me and Steve, my husband, into thinking about veganism, like actually doing it. And that was like really one of the first documentaries that we watched. And it's just so cool to talk to her about her experience on What the Health. She has been vegan for a really long time, so she's so experienced with it. And she started Plant Based on a Budget because she was on a budget. And I'm going to let her tell the whole story. But I think it's just so important to talk about, especially with what's happening with the finances of our country, what's happening with the recession. Like everyone's kind of like very money minded right now and really being cautious. And so it's really important to think about how we can increase our longevity, how we can be healthy, how we can really prevent diseases, reverse diseases, and do that in a way that is affordable, accessible, and that our family will love. And Toni does just such a beautiful job of explaining and informing us how we can do those things. I know for me, I have like my chef brain where a lot of the recipes that I'm posting and stuff, like I'll use almonds or I'll use something that might be more inaccessible for some people. And so I think it's important to get another just view on everything where it doesn't have to be like gourmet all the time, or it doesn't have to be XYZ, and it can just be simple and delicious and filling and something your family will really love. So I'm so excited for this episode. I hope you guys really love it. I think it's a great way to start off the year. It's such a light conversation, and it's inspiring to really realize that like you can literally eat dirt cheap and get nutrients, get fiber, get all the things that you need to really thrive. And I always say that like eating really healthy, eating a plant-focused diet, whether you're totally vegan or you just want to add more plants into your diet, um, it's an insurance policy all in itself. I think we spend a lot of time thinking about insurance, thinking about bills, thinking about healthcare. And what really is like the most efficient healthcare is taking care of your body. Diet has 80% to do with, what diseases we're going to get down the line when we're older. And so really focusing on that is just it's like the best prevention plan, and doing it in a way that's affordable is just like, it's just such a win-win. It's literally chef's kiss. So I'm so excited. Before we get into the episode, if you are interested in the 14-day plant-based challenge, it's literally only $14 a day. I mean, $14 for the whole thing, $1 a day, not $14 a day. And like I said, we have people from all over the world joining us right now. We hosted it live as a community, or kind of like a community wide for the first 2 weeks, but you can register whenever you want. It is a self-guided course. So you get 2 meal plans, one that matches our cookbook and one that matches our online recipes. And then you also get daily videos, you get daily inspiration, tons of resources, links to podcasts. Like it's really everything that you absolutely need to feel confident on a plant-based diet, especially going into it. So be sure to sign up for the 14-day plant-based challenge. Again, it's only $14, and you can sign up at www.chefbay.com/challenge. And I also do want to remind you guys that we have hundreds of free recipes over on our blog, and it's totally free to go check them out. So you can check out all those recipes at www.chefbay.kitchen/blog. And again, there's gluten-free recipes, everything is dairy-free, everything is refined sugar-free, and everything is damn delicious if I do say so myself. Okay, you guys, let's get into this episode with Toni. Let's give her a big welcome and let's go. I'm sitting down with Toni from Plant Based on a Budget. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to chat.
Thank you for having me. I am equally excited. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, we were just talking right before we started recording about like the crazy weather that's happening in California. You're in NorCal, I'm in Southern California, and it's just been like wild to see this happen. I don't remember a winter that's ever been this nuts.
Especially where you are. You live in the most beautiful place in the world and with the best, most mild weather. So I'm really shocked to hear that you are also experiencing some extreme weather.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Like, I mean, the surfers are loving it. We were just chatting about it. My husband's a big surfer, so they're loving it. It's like a once in 15-year swell, they're saying. So, and it's really like the only surfable place in California because like Santa Cruz is completely flooded and there's like
Yeah.
tons of debris in the water. So it's really like the only surfable place in the whole state right now, which is pretty crazy because it's a big state.
Yes, and I'm sure there are people who are hopping on planes right now. I was saying, I am not one of those people. I am
No.
let's hunker down, let's not leave the house for like the foreseeable future till the rain stops. And I bet you the thrill seekers are the opposite.
Yeah, totally. I know. I like don't know how I ended up marrying a thrill seeker, but here we are.
Well, you're so supportive. I've been watching your stories and I thought, oh, that's a real one right there.
Yeah, I mean, I tried to fight back like when we first got together. I've been with surfers in the past too, but I just, life is just easier when you're just like, okay, get it out of your system, do what you got to do. So,
Mhm.
so you have so many exciting things coming up, and I can't wait to talk about them all. But before we like dive into this full episode, I would just like love to know like what your favorite plant-based meal is right now.
Oh, that is a good question. I am a big soup lover. Some people call this cold weather season soup season. I
Yeah.
call all year round, even when it's 110 degrees here in Sacramento, soup season. So
Really?
I do. I love soup so much. It's such an easy way to get a nutritious, healthy, super easy one pot meal out of the
Yeah.
way. Or if you're ordering soup somewhere, it's also my favorite. Fresh made ramen, I cannot get enough of. It is the most comforting food.
I totally agree, especially in Northern California. I feel like I lived in the Bay Area and like the ramen up there was just like next level.
Yes, there was once a big, huge Japanese community here and where I live in the Upper Central Valley.
Yeah.
And my grandpa was actually part of that community as a Japanese farmer. And unfortunately, they were displaced during the internment. But a lot of people still came back and set up roots here. And so there is a lot of really good, authentic Japanese food still.
Oh, wow. That's so awesome. Do you have like a favorite place that you could send our listeners to if they're ever visiting or if they live
Oh,
there?
a lot of places didn't make it through the pandemic,
Mm,
unfortunately, but I did just try this place for vegan ramen called Ramen Do,
okay.
and it is very good. It's one of my favorite new places. I just tried it probably a month ago, and I've eaten it 3 times.
Okay. So it's like definitely like on the list now. It's like the
Yeah.
regular rotation of ramen, like it's
Yep.
there.
The only regret is that they don't have double noodles because I really, really love extra noodles.
Yeah, I totally
And
agree.
And they don't have that on their menu, so that's the only,
Oh, you can't
uh
order extra? That sucks.
yep.
Oh
Mm.
man. So like what's your favorite ramen broth to cook? 'Cause like, you are you, so I'm sure you have a bomb broth that you love to cook. Like is there a specific style that you like to cook with?
I do. I've made, actually in one of my older cookbooks, you can kind of see it right there,
Yeah.
the Friendly Vegan Cookbook, we have a ramen broth that is, mushroom-based and also has some soy milk in it to make it creamy,
Ooh. Yeah.
and it is delicious. It takes a little bit of time and effort to, make the broth and let it sit for a while and meld all the flavors together, but it is worth it. And here in Northern California and here in Sacramento, we have a ton of international grocery stores, but specifically near me, I have Chinese and Vietnamese grocery stores. So you can go and get, oh, and a Japanese grocery store. So you can go and get fresh noodles.
Oh, that's
Uh,
so nice.
and not have to make them yourself, which is a huge plus.
Yes.
And you have to watch out. Not all of them are vegan, but there are a lot of fresh noodles that are vegan as well.
I love that. I mean, we have a couple of Japanese grocery stores here in San Diego, but I think we really like are killing it on the Mexican grocery stores. Like we have
Oh,
so many good
yes.
ones. So yeah, I do
Yes.
miss that about NorCal because there's just like an abundance and there's just like ingredients that you can find at those stores that you just really cannot find at like your traditional like American style grocery store.
Yes, I had the great pleasure of growing up in a mixed home. So I'm Japanese and I'm Mexican, and
That's
I have
amazing.
my favorite foods are those types, and I got to grow up eating them. So I know that San Diego area is like top-notch vegan Mexican food.
Yeah, I did not expect that either when I moved here. Like it was just kind of like this surprise. I moved to the beach and then all of a sudden I was like, "Oh my God, this is like a vegan mecca of
Yep.
amazing Mexican food." So I love
Mhm.
that you like just mentioned growing up. I wanted to talk to you about just kind of like just so our listeners can get a feel for who you are. Just, you have an amazing career. You've written cookbooks, you have an amazing podcast, you have an amazing social media presence. And I'd love to just like hear like where it all started and what growing up was like for you.
Thank you. Okay, so I'll start with the growing up part and then we'll go in chronological order.
Okay.
I grew up here in Sacramento. I lived with my grandparents. My dad was just a teenager when I was born, and he went off to the Navy
Oh, wow.
full time. And I lived with my grandparents who were retired, so I was extra spoiled. I had a very interesting relationship with food because, as I mentioned, my grandpa grew food,
Mm,
and my grandma, her job was to cook the food that he made. And so I got to grow up eating really fresh, delicious food. And then when my dad came home around the age of 11, I started living like a bachelor. And we were eating hot dogs with canned chili on top and boxed mac and cheese and a lot of frozen meals like frozen pasta meals or hamburger helper, things like that, very standard American diet.
yeah.
And so I kind of lost touch with eating the way that I grew up eating with my grandparents. And I all that time didn't really have a connection with how food made me feel.
Mm,
And I started running track in high school and I was getting really sick to my stomach. It's hot in track season. Here it's like 110, 112 degrees, and you're out there
yeah.
running. And so if you're not nourishing your body and taking care of it, staying hydrated, you can really feel the consequences.
Yeah,
And
really quickly too. Like I
yeah,
feel like that is next level. Like that's like cook cookies in your car kind of hot.
yeah, it is really, really hot. And my coach was actually the first person to ever help me draw the connection between what I put into my body and how I feel. Before, it was all about sustenance and tasting good.
Mm,
But he said, "Hey, what are you eating?" Because I was feeling sick a lot. And I told him that I regularly go to Taco Bell. I have my bean burrito and my two beef tacos. That's my jam. Or I eat some cup of noodles or something like that. And he was like, "Oh, okay, let's fix that. Why don't you chill out on the fast food, and why don't you also stop eating so much red meat?"
mm,
And that was the first time I had ever made that kind of connection, and I began to take his advice and also thrive as an athlete. So that was the beginning of that. I slowly and very extremely gradually over a long period of time started taking out other animal products, first starting with fish products and then chicken, and uh, ultimately, probably 6 years after that, I became vegan. And I was able to become vegan because of the community college that I had gone to. I took this ethics class, and at this time, I was mostly vegetarian,
okay.
not considering broth, not considering picking off the pepperoni of my cheese pizza.
Yeah.
I
Been there.
just
I think we've all been there.
yeah. And I didn't know a lot about animal ethics. My family is not interested in hearing about it. And so I didn't have a lot of people in my life who brought that to my attention. And when I was at this community college, I took an intro to ethics class, and my professor said, "I will give everybody extra credit who goes to the veg club." So I started going to the veg club, and it was really welcoming. They had potlucks. They talked about animals in a way that was not off-putting. They
Mm,
didn't talk about like the extreme suffering that was happening. They talked more about the animal sanctuary that's nearby that rescues animals. And I thought, wow, this is so cool. And I felt supported. And I had peers who were living a very similar lifestyle, budget conscious, culturally rooted in their foods. And I felt like, if these people can do it, why can't I do it? So that's how it all started. We started cooking together. I started getting books from the library, printing out recipes, and playing with food, sharing the cost with my friends, cooking dinner in batches. And yeah, that's how that portion got started.
I love that. So what were you like originally going to community college for?
Oh, well, I was never, well, up until I would say my late 20s, I was not interested in academics. It was something
Mm.
that was an obligation for me. And I dropped out of community college. I went for communication. And it wasn't until I actually started doing plant-based on a budget full time that I went back to school at University of San Francisco and graduated with a business management degree.
That's awesome. I have like a similar mindset where like I wasn't super academic either. Like homework, like doing any of that stuff was just like not for me, which is why I became a chef. But yeah, like later on in life, I've been like a lot more interested in learning things. And because, you have like more of a purpose behind it more than just like an obligation to go to
Mhm,
school, I
mhm.
guess. So what were you doing like in between that before you did plant-based on a budget? Like how did plant-based on a budget kind of come to light?
I did a few things. I first worked as a tutor on campus. I worked at a restaurant. I did a lot of service jobs.
Mm,
I was a nanny for 5 years for one family.
wow.
And it wasn't until my early 20s that I um, left being a nanny so that I could get healthcare benefits. The healthcare benefits weren't as extended as they are now back then. So
Yeah.
now I think you have healthcare until you're 26, but
Mm-hmm.
at that time it was earlier when you got off of your parents' healthcare. So I got a job at an animal sanctuary here in Northern
Cool.
California, and that was my intro. Around that time is when I also started focusing on plant-based on a budget a little bit more. And it was cool because for the sanctuary, I got to help run their social media and grow their blog. So I was learning and also applying what I was learning from their larger presence to my little baby blog.
Oh, that's so awesome. Honestly, like my first visit to an animal sanctuary like rocked me to my core to a level where like it really just made my vegan journey so much bigger than what I, thought it
Mhm.
was. Like you watch videos and you watch documentaries and you're involved, but I feel like the second you go to a sanctuary and get involved with the sanctuary, the more you like kind of realize like what's on the line and you're able to connect with those animals. Do you have like any specific memories of the sanctuary that you want to share of like connecting with an animal or like how that kind of like helps shape who you are?
It's so funny that you say that because I did not have a strong connection with animals beforehand.
Mm,
My parents and my family are the kind of at that time, they're not anymore. Way back when my family was the type to put a dog outside to protect you and not bring your dog inside and like do what we do, which is let our dog sleep in our bed. I would rather sleep on the floor than let my dog sleep on the floor. So,
me too.
uh, so I just my previous life was not as connected with animals, and I thought I don't think that animals deserve to be in suffering, but I'm not trying to be their bestie.
Mm,
And it wasn't until I started working with them that I got to learn their unique behaviors and their personalities and see them as individuals and know their backstories and see how they grow as more confident beings after being in a really horrific place before. And I
mm.
feel like putting a face and an individual to a concept really changed a lot for me. And there's this one thing in particular that actually helped me grow a lot as a person. I had been in a relationship that did not make me feel very good for a little while, and I was super depressed about it. I was crying all the time, and I would go outside and sit in this cow pen, and this little baby calf had been he had escaped from a cattle farm in the middle of the very terrible storm.
Mm.
And he was picked up by the highway patrol who brought him to our sanctuary. And he was super scared. He was terrified, and he would not let anyone be near him. So he would sit on one corner and I would sit on another, and we would just both be super bummed together. And I'd go out and eat my lunch like this every day. And
Yeah.
we would get closer and closer and closer. And sorry, you can see my dog's head
His
popping
little
up right here.
nose.
He really wants to be on my lap. So after a very long period of time, we got so close that he would put his head on my lap. And it was such a a really beautiful experience to kind of learn from and grow with uh, an animal of a different species, and to see him learning how to trust people after being in a very bad situation gave me the inspiration to learn how to trust people
Mhm.
with a very similar experience of being in a not so great situation. And I I I'm so grateful for my time there, and um also watching other people have similar experiences, growing, learning, feeling connected to other species.
Yeah, I think that's so important because I think it's so easy to disconnect like what is on our plate, what we're eating, what we're buying at the grocery store, and like what that actually is, and that there is an individual attached to it, just as the same way that people would look at their dogs as an individual. Like like you're saying, we literally let them sleep in bed with us, and there's really no difference there other than the fact that we're just disconnected from them on purpose. It's kind of purposely designed that way. And yeah, I think it is so powerful. And if anyone's listening and you guys are like teetering on the edge, I definitely would recommend going to an animal sanctuary because it is really cool to see these animals who have had trauma be able to really like recover from that, just as we would recover from trauma, or like a dog that's in a rescue. Like both my dogs are rescues, and so they've both recovered from a lot of trauma. And like it's cool to see the fact that like these animals have that capability and they're so resilient. And then, if we give them the chance, they can kind of come back and be these happy little beings, which is so cool to see, which is very rare, obviously, with the statistics of factory farming and stuff, but it's cool that, these sanctuaries exist. And I do think they are so important. So I think that's awesome.
Yes, I agree. I'm actually getting like a little bit teary-eyed by what you're saying. I feel like it's so true. We as humans have this relationship with felines and canines, and for some reason don't extend the same compassion we share with them to cows and pigs and
Yeah.
rabbits and all of the other animals that we think of usually as food
Yeah,
animals.
totally. And it's like, where is the line? Like, why are they food? And have you seen that Instagram account? Actually, it's like it's like a satire account. It's about dog meat. Have you seen that?
No.
It's like totally satire, but they're kind of trying to like prove the point. They talk about how it's like fresh farm, pasture
Oh
raised,
my gosh.
organic dog meat. And they've been kicked off Instagram multiple times, but they keep getting brought back because it's just a totally satire account. But they're trying to prove the point of like, there are cultures that do eat dogs, and
Mm.
most, I would say, Americans are very against that. So it's kind of they're trying to like blend the lines between like different animals and being like, well, why do you care about these and not these? But it's their content is like really intense. But yeah, it's very
Mhm.
satire and yeah, really interesting. So you should definitely check that out when you have a chance because it's kind of wild that they took it that far.
Okay, will do.
Okay. So I'd love to talk more about you and kind of like the evolution of plant-based on a budget and kind of like, how you went from kind of just sharing your recipes to where you are now. And like, what was like one of the biggest challenges that you faced while kind of like creating your brand?
Well, I think a lot of people, so I've had plant-based on a budget now for 11 years.
It's awesome.
And thank you. And a lot of people, when they start full-time, have money.
Mm,
They had a job and they've been saving and they've been working toward it. I did not have that experience. I got laid off. I was working, so after the animal sanctuary, I went to a vegan advocacy organization. I got laid off from there after a couple years, and I started interviewing with some of the other big animal nonprofits, but the process takes so long, like
mm,
months. And meanwhile, you don't have money
yeah.
and so I started working more on plant-based on a budget. And I had one friend who in 2015 started working on her blog full-time. And she was so inspiring and encouraging and said, I really think you can do this. Just put your head down, keep plugging away, and at least while you're interviewing. And I started to see some growth. I think the biggest hardship of it all was in that time not having money, having bills to pay, living in really solid debt. And I'm really grateful that my brand is called Plant-Based on a Budget and not like Vegan Gourmet, because I was able to use my life experience at that time, and
Yeah.
bring it to my business and grow something. And I think one of the really pivotal moments was me. I started a Patreon,
Mm.
and I met someone who donated $11 a month for me to get off of the ground. And what was so important about that one was that he also decided that it would to offer to offer to meet with me and share his business experience. And he helped me think about my future not as a creator but as a business owner.
Mm.
And we did a SWOT analysis, we did projections for 1 year, 3 years, and 5 years. And I remember when he did my goals and I did my goals, and his goals were outrageous. They were like, make a livable wage of this amount of money. Like, he wanted me to make $70,000 in 5 years. And I was like, you may as well say like $1 billion,
Yeah.
because it just like, I could not fathom ever making that much money ever. And so I feel like that was the beginning, to have someone encourage me to think about it as a business and also dream big for me, because I did not have that within myself. I I did not know, I did not see the potential in the way that other people saw it in the very, very beginning. I just thought, I'm desperate, help. And so those were the most trying and both trying and inspiring times.
That's awesome. Yeah, I feel like it really helps having that like outside perspective. And it's true, really looking at like if anyone's listening who like wants to become a blogger, creator, anything like that, like really looking at it as a business versus just,
Mm.
creating content is so important because then you really get to see like all the avenues that you can take with it and how like creating content is just like one part of the whole thing, which is cool. And now you have cookbooks and like you have this whole brand, which is so amazing. So I could see how
Thank
pivotal
you.
that was. So like what was like a big turning point for you? Well, you've been in business for 11 years, so I'm sure there's been a lot of them, but like what was like one or two that kind of just changed everything?
The biggest life-changing experience was that, so I started meal planning.
Yeah.
I started meal planning on a very, very extremely tight budget. My budget was $25 for the week,
Wow.
and I showed people how they could have a meal at $1.19 per meal. And those did well. I first did free versions, but then I also created a $5
Mm.
version that was a little bit more upgraded, had nicer pictures, had a printable grocery list. And those were featured in a documentary that ended up on Netflix called What the Health. And so they invited me to come talk about what it's like to be on a budget. We walked through the grocery store, we grocery shopped together. We got rung up with all of this food, and it rang up as something like $21 or something like that. And that was a very life-changing experience for me, where I had a blog that did okay, to my site literally crashed. Like, people couldn't even get on it because so many people were trying to um, find these meal plans. So that was in
Wow.
2017, and that was the beginning of the goodness.
That's so awesome. What the Health, like, literally is why I went vegan. And
Oh, wow.
I don't remember seeing well, it's not like, it was like the
That's
beginning. I don't
that's
remember
so
seeing you on there, so I have to like
you and
rewatch it.
anyone else. Like, most people don't, most people who are not looking for a meal plan are kind of inspired by other parts of the movie.
Okay.
But I found a lot of people who desperately wanted to change,
Yeah.
but didn't know where to start at all. They had no cooking experience. A lot of
Yes.
people who reached out to me, they were asking, can I eat frozen peas? Is that plant-based? Can I eat
Yeah.
canned beans? Is that plant-based? And so a lot of people were starting from scratch with their cooking journeys. And I imagine that was not you. So I know that was not you.
Yeah.
Um,
That's true, but I do
so
know it's so interesting because so many people have such interesting takeaways from that movie specifically. Like they did a
mhm,
really good job at pinpointing like all the little things that someone would
could
have
be
like a
touched by.
Yeah, totally. Or have like an adversion to like, well, what about this? They kind of like touched all those things. So that is huge, honestly. Like what the health like changed the food industry, I really feel like. It changed
Mm-hmm.
the vegan industry. It really paved the way for like all of the other movies like Cowspiracy and Game Changers. And what are some of the other ones? Like Dominion came out
Yeah.
after that, I think. I can't
And
watch
then
that
their
one.
newest one, Seaspiracy.
And Seaspiracy too. Yeah. So it definitely like paved the way, which is pretty tight. So that's so exciting. Wow, I had no idea. That's so cool.
That was the beginning. And from there, I've been really fortunate to be so supported. I have a team I work with. So I have um, four other people who are full time on my staff.
Wow,
And I get to help people eat plant-based. It's a dream come true.
that's so awesome. And I think like you provide such a need too for people because I think like one of the biggest things that I constantly hear in comment feeds or just whatever is like vegan food is expensive. And like, so what is your response to that?
Mhm. I am very careful. I've been talking about one thing for 11 years, and I've heard some really, really, really rough struggles that people face. And so
Yeah.
I always try to be sensitive to their real
Mhm.
life struggles and not say, oh, that's an excuse. Or
Yeah.
that's like, I just try to see people for who they are, where they are, and help when I can. And people come to me when they're ready. I can't force anything onto people. And so what I say is, let's talk about what you're eating now. What's your current budget? All right, let's see how we can work with that. And I feel like that approach, after I've been vegan for 16 years and I was vegetarian before that, uh, that approach is the most impactful of all of the things that I've tried in my life. I've said like meat is murder. I've said like all of the things.
Yeah.
And just being a nice person who actually cares, who is non-judgmental, who meets people where they are, is the most impactful thing. It sounds counterintuitive, like you're not trying hard enough, but I feel like once you have this human connection with someone, uh, guards are let down on both sides, and you
Yeah.
can make change and teach people the the positives of eating a plant-based diet.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it is so important to meet people where they're at. And I think it's funny because you do see like a lot of angry vegans online. So everyone thinks that, not everyone, but a lot of people see vegans as the angry vegan. And I mean, we've all been there, you see a documentary and then you're just angry and you're like, oh my God, why don't people understand this or whatever? But yeah, I think eventually you do just like settle into it and realize that I try to think of myself, like my previous self. I was a butcher, a French chef. I come from a line of chefs. And like if someone came up to me and was like, meat is murder, like stuff that I was saying when I was an angry vegan, like I would have been like, go away. What are you talking about? Like I don't want to talk about this. I try to just like meet people where they're at too. And I think that's so important because everyone comes from like such different circumstances
Mhm.
where, just really like having compassion for them and who they are and where they come from and like, their cultural background, I think is so important. And I think that's the only way we're really going to move the needle when it comes to our food industry is really just like meeting people where they're at. And so, what would be like some of your top tips for someone that is struggling with eating healthy, eating plant-based, who maybe lives in like a more rural area or is on a super tight budget, or maybe doesn't feel like they have like the access to the things that they see on Instagram?
I would look at what you're currently eating and see which swaps can be made. I think one of the biggest things is that people think that they have to totally do an overhaul of everything that they eat when they become plant-based. But the
Mm,
reality is you can make so many simple swaps like pasta and noodles. That's vegan. And instead of maybe your ground beef, throwing in some lentils, which keep for a really long time. So
yeah.
if you live in a more rural place and you make your weekly trip or monthly trip to Walmart or wherever you grocery shop, you can stock up on those and not worry about them going bad. And also, they're such a cheap protein. Not only do they last long, but they also uh, fill you up, provide you with good protein, and they're just also delicious and versatile. So don't think you have to change everything overnight. You can still have those familiar foods that you love. Burritos. I live off of burritos. I love
Same.
them so much.
Literally same.
And honestly, I have one of my very dear friends is a mom, and she is very busy. Her kid is at home a lot, and she's also trying to work. And it doesn't have to be complicated. She buys a can of vegetarian refried beans, keeps some store-bought salsa, and uh, and some tortillas, and throws a burrito together very quickly. We'll chop up an onion, we'll put in some lettuce, maybe cut up a tomato,
Yeah.
but you can have a meal in 5 minutes if you're doing something like that. So those are some of the things. If you're on a very tight budget, I would spend some time thinking about what your meals are going to look like in the future. I feel like one of the things that has saved me the most money is meal planning. Meal planning
Yes.
is my jam.
Yes.
And
I'm preaching this all the time. I totally agree.
yes,
Yes.
yes. Not only is it going to help you stay on budget, but it also helps you make good decisions. I know that I used to have a 1.5 hour commute each way. And when I came home, leaving work at 6 p.m., and I had a 1.5 hour drive in traffic, the last thing I wanted to do was cook up a whole meal. But if
Yeah.
I had food waiting, I will not stop at Chipotle. I will not stop at like wherever on the way home, because I knew that if I could just get there, I would have a nice meal waiting for me that is nutritious and already paid for. So it's
Yeah.
good for a lot of different reasons. If you're in a place that doesn't have the best fresh food, I really love stocking up on frozen fruit. Frozen food is a huge thing in my house, and that's also with things like beans and rice. You can batch cook so that you don't have to regularly put in all the effort, and things last 2, 3, sometimes 5, 6 months.
Yeah.
And I actually talk a lot about that in my new book, Plant Based on a Budget, Quick and Easy. I'm trying to get the most out of my time in the kitchen. A lot of people think that I like cooking, when in reality, it's a means to an end for me. I love
Mm.
to eat. I'm a big eater. And so I feel like cooking just kind of gets me there. And so because of that, I try to look for shortcuts in the kitchen when I can. If I'm cooking and chopping an onion, I'll also chop a second onion while I'm doing the prep work, so that the next time I need something in the next couple days, I have a diced onion I can just toss in. And things like that really save time in the kitchen for me.
That's actually like so smart. I never do that. I don't know why. I love to
I will
make it
tell
hard for
you all the
myself.
ways.
That's great.
Well, do you like cooking?
Well, I mean,
I
yeah,
mean,
it's my
like
whole
it's,
life.
I know, but you really love it?
Yeah, I like
I,
so I sprained my thumb and my doctor was like, you should not be cooking for like 6 weeks. And I
oh
literally
no.
took 1 week off and I couldn't take anymore. I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm just gonna have a hurt thumb forever, I guess. Cause yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I I feel like the extra onion thing is not really for you, because you like chopping onions, probably. You probably are like so into it that you don't even cry anymore. Is that true?
Oh, I haven't cried over an onion in a long time. A long
Goals.
time. Yeah.
I
It's also
recently,
the sharpness of your knife. So like what I learned is if your knife is a little bit dull, it causes like so like all vegetables have like a cell wall. And so if it kind of doesn't have a clean cut, if it kind of like bends a little bit, it releases more
mhm.
of the like aroma that causes your eyes to water. So if you're crying over an onion, it could just mean that your knife isn't sharp enough.
That is probably true. Do you get all of your knives professionally sharpened, or do you do them
I do.
yourself?
I do, yeah. I like sharpen mine on a steel before I cook every time, but yeah, every couple months I have so many knives. I get them all sharpened professionally at the farmer's market, actually.
That is so cool. That is so cool.
Yeah.
I feel like It sounds so ridiculous that I asked you if you like to cook, but I know so many people who do things and who are trained in them who are like, this is my job.
Yeah, I mean, it
This is what I
depends on
do.
the day, like I still private chef and I host like pop-up dinners and stuff, but like if I'm having a big day of cooking professionally, then the last thing that I want to do is cook for myself. But
Yeah.
like I love my job, and if I'm not cooking for someone else, I'm like, "Oh, I want to make food for myself." But yeah, it's kind of like I'm not gonna do that again. Like if you teach yoga for
Mhm.
a living, you're not gonna like go to a yoga class after teaching yoga all day. So I think that's kind of like I definitely have a limit where I'm like, I'm over this for the day. But yeah,
Yes,
I do like it.
it's like people who date someone who's a professional masseuse
Yeah,
and think that they're gonna come home and get a massage, and that's just
never.
not how it goes.
You're never gonna get one. Yeah. That's so true.
Yep.
Well, I'd love to hear like a little bit more about your book. When is it coming out? And like tell me all the details.
Got my book right here. You
Oh,
will
it's
get
so
your copy very
beautiful.
soon. Thank you so much. It's called Plant-Based on a Budget, Quick and Easy. It comes out on March 7th. And like I mentioned before, it is showing how easy and affordable and accessible and quick plant-based eating can be. It is such a misconception that it is expensive or that it takes too much time to eat fresh produce or cook with fresh produce. But
Yeah.
there are lots of tips and tricks that you can learn. I have spent a lot of time making mistakes in the kitchen and sharing how you don't have to make those mistakes and you can save time and it can be easy and it can be really delicious. And I also encourage people to make things their own. I'm going to show you an example of something, and I'll just open up a page. I really encourage people to write their own notes. I don't know if you can see that, but
Yeah, pull back a little. Yeah. Oh, cool.
there are
Yeah.
lines that say my tips so that people can write in their own notes. I learned how to cook like that. As I mentioned, I learned how to cook through cookbooks, and I would, based on whatever I had, if I had kale instead of spinach, I would say, ooh, this tastes good with kale as well, because that's what I had. And I didn't want to go out and buy, or I couldn't afford to go out and buy the spinach.
Yeah.
So I encourage people to take these recipes, which are kind of like um, they're very versatile, and make them their own. Keep their family's preferences in mind because ultimately, that's that's the judge is your kid.
Yeah. It's true.
Will they eat this? And that's that's what I want for people who are taking home this book, to understand that it's affordable, easy, your family can love it, it's familiar, and it can be accessible with ingredients that you can buy at your own grocery store.
I love that. I mean, it's just like the concept that like recipes are just a guideline. They're not a rule book. And like they're just so great for inspiration and education. But at the end of the day, like you got to make something your own, you got to like throw
Yes.
it in there. And I love that you gave like a space to do that because most cookbooks, mine included, there's just like no space to write anything else. So it's cool that you like made sure graphically that there was enough space for people to kind of write their own notes and like make the book their own in a way.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm really excited. We're up for pre-orders right now. Pre-orders are super important because it
Yes.
helps retailers decide if they should stock the book. It also helps with media coverage. It also helps determine whether or not you hit any bestsellers list. So I appreciate every single person who purchases my book. I don't take it lightly. I totally value the money that people invest in anything that is
Yeah.
created by me, and I'm so grateful for it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So where can people pre-order it?
I have a website called plantbasedonabudgetcookbook.com, and there are a lot of different options, including signed copies available at the Strand in New York, and you can buy those online. And I also have a ton of freebies available for anybody who buys it early.
Cool. That's so awesome. We will make sure to put all the links in the show notes so you guys can get your hands on a copy. I feel like this cookbook specifically would be like the best gift because like I have so many people in my life specifically, like I'm thinking like the older generation, like my parents and their friends who are always talking about like cooking and how complicated things are and like how vegan can be so complicated. And I'm like, this is literally like the perfect gift for them.
That is awesome. I agree. My family, they actually do live by that.
Yeah.
They are very relaxed in the kitchen. They don't want to put in a lot of effort. So I think that that's right, that they can cook one time. They have one pot meals, freezer friendly meals, and plant-based on a budget, quick and easy, where they can invest a short amount of time and eat for the next week or two.
Yeah, which is so important. So I also saw that you have a podcast too, which is so awesome. So if you're listening to the show, what is your podcast called?
Thank you. It's called the Plant Powered People Podcast. I co-host it with my friend Michelle Kane. She's actually the person who is the one who convinced me to do
Oh,
this full
amazing.
time back in 2016.
She's amazing too. She puts
That
out a
is
lot of
really
great
true.
stuff. Yeah.
Her brand is World of Vegan, and her handle is just at vegan.
Yeah. She got like the best vegan Instagram handle there is.
She
I love
really
that.
did. She really
That's
did.
so cool. Yeah, I saw you just had Adam Sudd as your most
Mhm.
recent guest, and he's going to be the guest after you on my show as his part two. Like the second time he's on here, he's such a great guest, such a great person to talk to. So,
So inspiring too.
yes.
I feel like sometimes you can feel an immense burden of the world's everything, like everything the
Yeah.
world puts on you. And he has taken his traumas and his sadness and all of the negative energy and turned it into positivity. And I
Hmm.
love that he was able to do that.
Yeah, totally. He's such a bright light. So, yeah, make sure you check out the podcast, pre-order the cookbook. And then I finish every single episode with the speed round. So I'm just going to ask you a bunch of questions so people can get to know
Okay.
you better and just like answer the first thing that comes to the top of your head. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. You ready?
Ready.
Okay, let's do it. Are you a night owl or an early bird?
Night owl all the way.
Oh, me too, honestly. I've tried to wake up early, it just
Same. My husband is a early bird.
good for him. Okay, what is your biggest passion outside of your job?
Swing dancing.
Swing dancing. That's amazing.
Yes.
I would not have guessed for you to say that. That's so
I've
cool.
been dancing for over 10 years and it's so fun. I love it so much.
Okay, we're gonna have to talk more about that later. That's so cool.
Okay.
What's a big personal goal that you have for yourself this year?
I want to hit some bestsellers lists with my new
Yes.
cookbook.
Let's help her get there, y'all. You know what to do.
Thank you.
Where is your favorite place in the whole world?
At my house with my family.
I love that. What's your favorite way to unwind?
I love unwinding by eating a big pot of soup.
Yes, bringing it back to the very beginning of the episode. I love that. Who or what are you inspired by right now?
I'm inspired by all of the people who are part of my community at Plant Based on a Budget, who share their lives with me, share their stories, who have enough trust in me to share my food with their families, and then not only do that, but then come back and tell me about it. It keeps me continuously inspired.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's definitely like such good motivation to keep going for sure. I love that.
Yes.
If you could change one thing about the world, what would it be?
I would encourage, mm, mm, if I could change one thing about the world, it would be to make people more others focused. I think that having compassion and uh, really deeply caring about others would change behavior and better the world overall, and definitely help with animal suffering.
Yeah, totally. I totally agree. Okay, if you were three more questions, if you were stranded on an island and could only bring three things, what would they be?
Can they be people or
Yeah,
no?
totally, whatever you want.
Okay, I bring my husband and my dog Eddie, and also, oh no, is there food there?
I mean, it's an island, so I think like coconuts and
Oh, geez. Okay. Hmm. I will also bring, um, can I bring like a Mary Poppins bag?
no.
Oh,
I
dang.
mean, yeah, I
Okay.
guess like a bag filled with stuff. You're like the person who you're like, you could have three wishes. Your last wish is like a million more wishes.
Yes. Yep, that's me. I'll Yeah. No, okay.
Love that.
I will. Oh, a pillow.
A pillow.
I really like to sleep. Even when I go camping, even if we're backpacking, I'll want to bring a pillow.
Necessary. I'm totally with you on
Sleep
that
is
one.
really important. It's really
Yeah,
important.
non-negotiable. Okay, what advice would you give to your younger self?
The advice that I'd give to my younger self is to be more understanding that if someone online is going to be a little bit harsh to you, that it's not you. I've spent my whole adult life on the internet, and sometimes, especially early on, it can feel like a very personal attack when someone comments on your recipe and how it sucks or how you are annoying or whatever, your voice is terrible. I really thought at some point that I needed voice therapy and to change my voice because some people were not very nice about it. So I would encourage myself to understand that that's not me, that's them, and
Mm.
not worry about it, not bring that stress into my life and let it impact my day.
That is so important. Such good advice, especially to anyone who is new in the online world and like really nervous about putting yourself out there. Like, people are going to troll you no matter what. You just have to know it's not you, it's them. I think that is so
Mhm.
important. Yeah, totally. Okay, final question. Do you have any final words of wisdom for our listeners?
I do. I would say that if you're listening and you are interested in plant-based eating, remember that it is okay to go at your own pace. As I mentioned, it took me 6 years to become vegan. And when I did it for good. It was about progress over perfection and setting myself up for long-term success. And I feel like if you accidentally have a hiccup and go back on your New Year's resolutions or accidentally slip up or on purpose slip up, tomorrow is a new day. You can choose plant-based tomorrow and all is well.
I love that. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much to Toni for coming on the Plant Remedy podcast. I loved having her on. Be sure to send her a DM over on Instagram and be sure to pre-order her brand new book that is coming out so soon. Also, if you guys love the show, I would appreciate it so much if you could leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or give us 5 stars over on Spotify. It helps get the word out about the show, and it's really just one of the best things that you can do to support the show if you do love the show. So again, leave a review on Apple Podcasts or leave us 5 stars on Spotify. And of course, sharing with your community is also such a great way to get the word out as well. Okay, you guys, next podcast, we have an insanely amazing episode planned. I cannot wait to release it. So we will be back in 2 weeks with a brand new episode of the Plant Remedy podcast. Until then, stay sane, stay true to yourself, take care of yourself, and be safe out there. And remember, if you are missing Chef Bay or if you're missing any of this, you can always pop over to our Instagram at chef_bay or at the Plant Remedy podcast. And we have so much content and so much stuff that we're posting every single day, and you can find us there. Okay, have a great day, and I'll see you guys in a couple weeks. Bye.